Good evening. I'm Phillip in New York. Let's get right to what America is talking about. Vaccines. Tonight, what you think is safe, Donald Trump's new health pick doesn't. RFK Jr. would run the Health and Human Services Department for the president-elect, but RFK Jr.'s lawyer, who is helping to select the people who will be in charge of your health, has petitioned the government to revoke its approval of the polio vaccine. The polio vaccine, which has been approved for decades and which has saved millions of people from a virus that can paralyze or kill you. And this isn't just some idea that's just floating out there. The president-elect himself is on record saying that he is open to whatever RFK Jr. is suggesting here. He talked to Time magazine about ending childhood vaccination programs, and Trump said this, quote, "We're going to have a big discussion. The autism rate is at a level that nobody ever believed possible. If you look at things that are happening, there's something causing it." First, we have to say this loud and clear. There is no proof that childhood vaccines cause autism, none. But Trump still sees them as a potential danger. He says this also. It could, if I think it's dangerous, if I think they are not beneficial, but I don't think that it's going to be very controversial in the end. It is going to be controversial. RFK Jr. insists that he doesn't want to take away any vaccines. But does that sound consistent with this? This is his past statement about vaccines.
There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective. Here's the problem. The polio vaccine contained a virus called simian virus 40, SV40. It's one of the most carcinogenic materials that is known to man. And now you've had this explosion of soft tissue cancers in our generation that kill many, 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 many more people than polio ever did. So if you say to me that the polio vaccine was effective against polio, I'm going to say yes. And if you say to me, did it kill more people, did it cause more deaths than avert, I would say, I don't know, because we don't have the data on that.
Joining us in our fifth seat at the table tonight, Dr. Scott Ratzan. He is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Health Communication and a distinguished lecturer at CUNY's School of Public Health and Health Policy. And Doctor, the first thing about you is that you are a doctor. RFK Jr. is not. And he's doing something that is very unscientific. He is saying, I observe this thing over here and I observe this thing over there, and I'm just going to say that there's a relationship, even if there is not.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Abby, and absolutely. As a physician, I've been very proud of what we've been able to do with vaccination in this country. And the fact that we've been so successful with polio and measles vaccination, we've not seen the diseases that worry people. So right now we have a very difficult situation when we have politicians going against what's settled science. And we really have to think about what is the way that we could have quality communication that people understand what vaccines are good for and why they should take them. And we have to figure out a way that get the science out in front of the people, not necessarily the politics in front of the people.
This is really dangerous, Pete. I mean, I don't understand why there isn't more outcry over this on Capitol Hill, but I will read this from Senator Mitch McConnell, who is the Senate leader, and he is a survivor of polio. He says anyone seeking the Senate's consent to serve in the incoming administration would do well to steer clear of even the appearance of association with such efforts to get rid of the polio vaccine. I am actually more curious about why that is not a statement that says anyone who tries to suggest falsely that vaccines should be eliminated, essentially, for children in this country, shouldn't serve in a health post in the government. I'm not sure why it didn't go that next step.
Well, I think RFK Jr. needs to immediately disavow any move towards getting rid of the polio vaccine, number one.
What about his own comments?
But number two, Donald Trump has not said that he wants to get rid of the polio vaccine. In fact, he has said the opposite. He has said it would be a very difficult case to make to him because he has seen that this vaccine has worked. But I think the bigger picture here is the American people they have a bias against expertise, unfortunately. They have a bias against credible peer-reviewed data because they have felt misled and mistreated by the government. And so you almost hit on it there. It's anecdote. That is what drives decision-making for Americans right now. It's kind of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where they hear, the cousins, sisters, nephews, uncles didn't get a disease and they were unvaccinated. Well, it's good enough for me. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's the reality of the situation.
Just to go back to what you were saying earlier, do you think RFK Jr. is also the one questioning the polio vaccine? I mean, is he going to distance himself from himself, or is that disqualifying?
Well, he wouldn't be the first person in politics to distance himself from himself. So yes, he absolutely should.
Fair enough. I mean, Doctor, what he's saying, I think Pete is right in diagnosing what the American people are experiencing, which is distrust in institutions. The cause, though, I think is up for debate. A part of the reason they have distrust is because some people have been lying to them. And one of those people is RFK Jr.
Well, unfortunately, this has been going on for some time, and people have been misled and confused by a lot of these issues, from the autism piece that you rightfully said has been settled. There is no link between autism and vaccination, but yet we continue to challenge that day in and day out with these kind of questions. And it's not just polio. I mean, the case also has 13 other vaccines that are under threat. When I was born, there were not even measles vaccines. 400 to 500 people were dying every year. Now we don't even hear about measles. We have 16 outbreaks because people are not getting vaccinated. The science and the medical community is having difficulty because of this expertise that's been hacked away. And unfortunately, we have to figure out a way to make America healthy with the proper communication. And that requires all of us working together. Unfortunately, we don't have them all working together right now, not only in Washington, but really within, whether it's in the scientific community or academic hospitals even.
Yeah, I want to play this. This is from this activist mother who is a strong backer of RFK. This is how she responded when she heard that Trump was going to appoint him to a role in the government.
What was your reaction when you saw that President Trump had named him to this incoming position?
I cried, many other people cried. We were so excited.
Guys, it's happening. The CDC and the FDA say that vaccines are safe. They say that the schedule for kids is safe. The EPA, the FDA, and the USDA say that GMOs are safe. The NIH says vaccines do not cause autism. That doesn't move you at all?
No, absolutely not. I have seen too much independent science to say that they are not.
Yeah, when you hear that, what do you think?
Independent science, what's that, doctor? I mean, this is dangerous talk that we're in right now, because it's encouraging people like this woman on the screen to feel like they don't have to vaccinate their kids. And that message is going to get out there, and more people are not going to be vaccinated, and people are going to die. And it's also dangerous because, even though you said, Pete, that people have this distrust in officials and science, they have this because Donald Trump and people like Donald Trump are spreading that message. And if we had a president and health leaders who actually took seriously what they said, that wouldn't be the case. So part of the responsibility of our leaders, and I think you know this because you work for George W. Bush, part of the responsibility for leaders is to be able to communicate accurate, effective information. And it shouldn't be partisan. It shouldn't be polarized. It should be what is scientifically proven and true.
So, but I want to know what is wrong about what he said in the Time magazine interview.
He said we're going to test. He suggested that you just heard the doctor say it. It's settled science. Autism is not caused by vaccines. Donald Trump said the opposite. He said he tried to make a connection between autism and vaccines that is not there. That's just not true.
So my point that I'm trying to make here is and I think I'll get to what's happening. He said, we're going to test this. We're going to look at it. We'll see the data. I think
on vaccines and autism?
I think what he's actually doing is throwing RFK Jr. a bone. I truly am not convinced that he's bought into what RFK Jr. wants to do as much as he's bought into as much as he's bought into the idea that a Kennedy supports him.
But it doesn't,
that's what this is about.
But it doesn't matter whether he bought into it or not, because other people out there in America will hear that and believe it. That's what counts. The words of the President of the United States matter. And he should not be saying things, regardless of whether he believes it or not, if it's going to have a negative and deleterious impact on people in America.
All right, there's one more thing that RFK Jr. has his hands in. It's actually over at the CIA, believe it or not. He's trying to back a relative of his daughter-in-law, for a top CIA post. And it seems like one of the main reasons is to investigate his view that JFK was assassinated by the government, essentially. This is a person who, according to our reporting, Tom Cotton, a Republican senator, opposes. It's so interesting to see all of these people coming into the government essentially to kind of like flog their hobby horses rather than do the work of the American people.
I understand that there might be concerns that there could be nepotism there, and that's a fair criticism to make. But it's very hard for Democrats to level that after Joe Biden just pardoned his son for crimes going back 14 years. Let's level the playing field here.
What do
She
those two
released a
things
book.
have to do with each other?
Well, let's talk about what they have to do with each other. Is Democrats are trying to say that there's an issue here. Let's call a spade here. If they want people to trust them and think that nepotism's an issue, whether or not that's the issue. But let me finish my point before you try to jump down my throat on it.
I'm not going to jump down your throat.
But do
Let
let
me
her
finish my point.
Do let her finish her point. Go ahead.
So if there's a concern about nepotism, fine, fair point to make. I don't think Democrats have much credibility on that issue. If the concern is that she put out a book without it going through the government background check process, fine, fair issue to make. John Bolton did the same thing. But if the concern is whether or not she's qualified to work in the CIA, have that conversation. Tom Cotton can have every concern in the world, but that's not a nominated position that she would be put forth for. That's just one hired by the CIA director. So if we're now going to be looking at every single personnel, I think that's what the DOJ committee is going to be doing anyways, to see where we can be removing inefficiencies or people who shouldn't be working in the government. But as of this point, this is just being a speculative name put out there of a person that's related to somebody else who's getting a job. This happens quite frequently, and if there's a concern about her credibility or her ability to do the job in the national security space, litigate that. The rest of it, Democrats don't have much ground on.
Look, I care less about the nepotism than I do about the lack of qualifications of any number of these people. We were talking about RFK. He is wholly unqualified to lead HHS. And every single day that he opens his mouth and talks about vaccines not being effective treatments or preventative measures to be taken by the American people, despite all of the science to contradict that, is evidence of the fact that he should not be in a public health role. You know, it may happen often, but I think it's unlikely that so many people who are related to folks in power are the best possible people to be at the helm.
Just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence.
You know, Doctor, I do want to give you a quick last word because, I mean, what's the level of danger of all of this RFK-isms? I mean, I do believe that Americans, a lot of them, have real concerns about their health, about the safety of their food, their water, all that stuff. But when you see someone like RFK taking that and trying to pivot it into all these other areas, what do you think?
Well, rightfully so. We should be very concerned because if we do have a dialing back of the success that we've had, not only with vaccination, but with other public health progress, we're going to be in real trouble in this country. We need to have a health literacy that comes from the secretary level, from the president level. The whole country ought to have a way to understand that health is our only common currency. Disease knows no borders. We've got to think both globally, nationally, and locally in all these areas. We try to do a lot of work at the community level because that's where people are getting their information. And that's where we really need to have a good education system as well on this. So it's a big challenge. It's not just HHS. It's a good part of the government, as we all know. And it's great that we're able to have this discussion because we need to have better quality communication, better quality health information for Americans.
It's long overdue in this country. Dr. Scott Ratzan, thank you very much for joining us. Everyone else, stick around for me.